Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another of my RHCE practice sessions for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite everyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be aware when new content comes available. Feel free to leave comments and questions, praise or critique, whichever you feel. I'll respond to it as I have both time and ability. Also, if you enjoy the content of the video, make sure that you click like as well as share with others that might find it useful as well. So these particular practice sessions, I do want to stress, are not designed to be tutorials, nor are they designed to be authoritative information. That being said, I am trying to give you as accurate of information as possible, but the purpose of these is to record a review session with whatever objectives to do a bit of a self-test. I'm about a month or so away from my RHCE exam, and so I'm at a point where I'm going through all of the objectives that have been posted by Red Hat and seeing if I can talk about them, talk intelligently about them, do some examples and such of the items, and then at the end of the video, if I feel pretty confident in what I presented, then I think I'm pretty much well prepared for whatever items that those would be on the exam. And if at the end of the video I'm not, then I know I need, between now and the actual RHCE exam, I need to spend some time on those topics. So the one that we're going to be looking at in this video is under the heading of be able to perform all tasks expected of a Red Hat Certified System Administrator. So this whole block of objectives for the RHCE exam is really a review of RHCSA. And the idea behind this is to perform well with RHCE. You need to be competent in these areas for RHCSA. So I'm going to be going as quickly as I can through these. I really haven't touched the RHCSA stuff, since I took the exam last year. Obviously, I'm using some of the skills and such in my lab and the like, but the vast majority of my study for RHCE has been on the Ansible side of things. So this is a good exercise for me, and I encourage you to do it as well for your own RHCE studies, is to actually go back over these old RHCSA objectives and see how much you remember, and see if you need to shore up your knowledge on some stuff. If you watched any of my previous RHCE practice session videos, you'll know that there's some storage stuff that I need to definitely review before I actually sit the RHCE exam. So the objective we're going to be looking at is the deploy, configure, and maintain systems objective. So if I go back to the RHCSA objective list for that particular section of objectives, the first thing it talks about is scheduling tasks using AT and cron. So I'm here in my Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 workstation. Let me SSH into one of my test servers. Eddie admin at lab.rel svr01. All right, let's clear the screen. So we are in here. We're going to start with cron and then go to at. Cron is basically the task scheduler for a Linux system. And what we can do, you have crons that are kind of a system-wide thing, as well as crons that are done by individual users. Now, I'm not going to go real deep into this because, again, this is just kind of a brief review of RHCSA to make sure I still understand the concepts and such. But I am going to go into the etc directory, and let's take a look at a couple of things. One thing to keep in mind is there's actually something called anacron that you would probably be using for a decent bit of stuff, whereas anacron, basically the way that it works is it keeps track of whether or not a task has run at a particular time. And so unlike cron, if let's say a task misses its firing off, and for like the system shut down or whatever, so when you come back up, anacron will realize that and then run the task, versus something that's just defined in cron, it's only going to run if the system is available for that. And we'll dig into the configuration and such in just a moment for that. If you notice these directories here, this cron.daily.hourly.monthly, if you were to drop your script in these directories, then at some point in the day, in the hour, in the month, and that's according to your anacron. I'm pretty sure anacron tab is where the directives are for when daily, hourly, monthly are going to happen That is where you would drop those scripts for that. Cron.d is a little bit special as far as if you need something that has a different interval than those, you will probably be using cron.d. This idea of cron.deny file, if I were to cat that, I have to be root to do that. I don't think I have to though. Yeah, there's nothing in there. So if cron.deny exists, what that means is everyone on the system can create cron jobs except the people in this list. Now, if we got rid of this file and did cron.allow, then that means no one on the system except for usernames in the cron.allow list would be able to do tasks or to be able to schedule cron tasks. So let's cat the cron tab file. That'll let us do that. This is very useful in the fact that it can be difficult to remember the exact notation standard for doing cron. Things that go into the cron tab file, you would basically tell it whatever hour, minute, day, month, or day of the week that you would want to do your task. You'll tell it what username to run for that, and then the command to be executed. Now that's special just for cron tab. Otherwise, if I were to just do my my own cron tab -e, and let's say I want to have on every minute of, or let's do this. I'm gonna do my little VI trick and cat /etc cron tab. There we go. So that gets me my little items, and I'll DD a lot of that stuff away. So we'll do every minute, every hour, every day of the month, every month, day of the week. I'm not going to use username because this is my own cron tab. And what I'm going to do is simply, we'll do the command echo the date is, do the date command, and we're going to put that, actually we'll append this to temp datetime.text. All right, so cron tab -l, cron tab -l. You see my little item there, and I left the other stuff there from that. If I were on the exam, I would clear that stuff out. So every minute we should be getting something in our temp date time. So we'll check that in just a moment. That's basically what you would do when you're configuring cron. If you're doing it at the system level on /etc cron tab, then you have to include the username. Otherwise, the username is assumed from the fact that you're doing this actual user's cron. Now, if you're curious where this is stored, we're going to the var directory. Actually, var spool is where we're headed. If I were to ls this, we can go into cron, or I may not be able to do that. Nope. So if I were to sudo ls cron, feed it my password here, we see Eddie admin has a file there. If I were to do cron Eddie admin, we see that is where my cron tab file lives. Now, anacron. So let's go back to our /etc directory, and let's take a look at sudo vi anacron tab. So what we're doing here for anacron tab, this is where you can configure random delay, the start range hours and such, and here we have 3 jobs listed in anacron tab, and what the job is actually doing is running the nice command. And what we're feeding the nice command, we're doing nice, running the run parts command, and then feeding it /etc cron daily, weekly, hourly. And these fields here, notice period in days. We have delay in minutes. One of the reasons why you have this delay is to where jobs might not be running on top of one another. The little job identifier is cron.daily, and then the command is actually starting here at nice. So if you're curious, let's take a look at out of this here, and we're going to man run parts. So what this run parts is doing, that's what anacron tab is using to run the stuff that is in. Let's go into /etc cron temp.daily. And we see we have log rotate here. So if I were to cat, actually let's do less, log rotate. And we see the script that's running for that. So Anacron tab is going to be running this daily, and the parameters that are within Anacron tab tell it basically when to attempt to run it. Now, if I were to go back to that var directory, there should be, is it going to be under spool? There's a file that's going to be made. Is it within Anacron? There it is, cron.daily, and see if we can cat that. All right, nothing in there for cron.daily. Basically what happens is there will be a timestamp that is, I can't remember if it's actually put in the cron.daily, cron.monthly, cron.weekly tab or not. And what that timestamp is going to do is basically tell Anacron if this is run yet. And then when Anacron checks this, and if there is nothing here for the timestamp, then Anacron goes, hey, I haven't run this, and I need to do so. Kind of an oversimplification of Anacron. Probably before my exam, I'll review just a bit to make sure I have some of the particulars of Anacron. But the thing to remember, Anacron is not going to be a command that you're running. It is simply another way of the basically cron service knowing when to run tasks and such. Let's go over to our temp directory. Let's see if we have a file. All right, date time, let's cat date time. All right, so it's run several times here, and it'll continue running every minute. And that's basically what's happening with your cron job. You can either tell it to do a command as we did, or you can tell it to run a script such as the log rotate to be able to do what you need to be able to do with log rotate. All right, so moving on, we have scheduled tasks with at. Now, at is like a one-off cron. So the idea behind this is you're basically saying at sometime in the future, do this thing. I personally have not used at that much just in my own home lab and such. I haven't found it that useful for things to do. That doesn't mean that you don't need to know at. It's worth your time working with that. The thing I tend to just schedule in the future is usually a reboot if I were to patch my hypervisor and such, and I just do that with shutdown -R. But to use at, you have to make sure that it is installed. So we're going to do sudo dnf install at. Now it's entirely possible that at will already be installed on your system that you're working on for your RHCE exam, but again, I run my lab with the minimal installations specifically to know what packages I would need to install for various tasks should they come up. So with the at command, you're basically saying at sometime in the future, and go into the man pages for that. The sometime in the future, you can do like plus some amount of time or feed it an actual date time using the 24-hour method. Or you can use some words. I know now or today is one. Is today one? No. I know tea time is one. Here we go. Noon, tea time, which is 4 p.m., midnight. So what we're going to do here, let's do at, so it's 1541. So I'm going to say 1545. Then we have to give it our command. So we're going to echo foo-blah into temp at.txt. All right, and then we do Control D to end that. What? It's a service that needs to be running. So one thing for that, remember, we will enable a service because everything you do has to persist through a reboot. -- now. I have to feed that our credentials since I'm not running as root. Am I misspelling that? I guess I was. All right, so now let's try that again. So we're going to do at 1545. I'm going to echo foo-blah to temp at.txt and Control D. There we go. So now it is set. So if we were to do ATQ, we see we actually have two jobs. So I'm not sure which job is actually going to work. Let's do ATRM, get rid of one of those jobs. ATQ, So now we just have job 2 available. Now I think you can do AT-L and then the job number. No, let's look at. There was some command you can actually see what has been configured. There it is, -C. So AT-C and the job. And this is everything that's actually been configured. There's a ton of stuff, and you'll see the actual command that it's going to run. So we'll check back on that in a couple of minutes and see if the @ job ran. All right, so next it talks about we have to start and stop services and configure services to boot automatically. Well, we have already configured the @ service, and we did the system CTL enable for that. And I used a shortcut of -- now that also starts the service. If we wanted to stop it, we could simply do system CTL stop and then the service. So I'm not going to rehash that. You've seen that a couple of times in my video. Then we have configure systems to boot to a specific target automatically. Now, if I were to do system CTL, let's clear this here, get default. The default target for this server is multi-user target. If I wanted to change that to another target, I can simply do, actually I have to do sudo for this, system CTL set default, and then say whatever target it is. Let's say I wanted it to start, well, assuming this server has a desktop environment installed, which it does not, but just assuming that it did, I wanted to start with a different target and I wanted to start with the one with the desktop, I would do graphical.target. And what that's going to do is create a symlink that default.target within etc systemd system is pointed to whatever the target is that we want to boot the system into. And this obviously is going to persist because it has created a symlink. So let's change this back to multi-user.target, which is the typical command line environment that you would be in on a server. There are other targets such as like emergency.target and there's another one. There's rescue.target as well. Those are ones that have just a few services running. Basically, if your system is having problems and can't boot properly, you would boot into those targets to try to do some troubleshooting to then get back to where you can use your more functional multi-user target and graphical target as well. All right, so it's 1546. Let's see what's in our temp directory. And we see our cat at.txt, so that @ job worked for us. Now, moving on, the next thing that's on this list is configure time service clients. So, in the past, RHEL has used NTP, I think it's NTPD, for its time service. What you're going to see in RHEL 8 is going to be cronid. So, let's do systemctl status cronny. I think it's cronid. Yep, it's running, and that's what we're doing for our NTP service. And so if we have to configure the time service client, that would be this system here that's reaching out to wherever to be able to get its time via NTP. And the systemd application for that to work with this is something called timedatectl. So if I were to just type timedatectl, it's going to tell us whether or not NTP is active. It's going to give us the local time in UTC, and also the actual clock time as well, which is going to be in UTC. It'll tell us our time zone and say whether or not our real-time clock is in the local time zone, which generally I've always seen that to be no. So if we need to make some changes, we'll be using timedatectl for a good bit of this stuff, such as if I wanted to disable NTP, timedatectl, I think it's NTP disable. If I remember right, nope. I am not remembering. So let's see if tab completion can help us here. Nope, it is not, because I have not installed bash completion on this yet. So when in doubt, check out the man page. Let's see, timedatectl. Set NTP, that's what I'm looking for. Set NTP, and then we want to say false. I must have fat fingered my password. Let's try that again. There we go. And if I were to do timedatectl, we see that NTP is inactive. Now this is going to persist as we have used the actual systemctl piece for that. We do true. We see that with time date CTL that NTP has been set to true. You can also set your time zone with this, and I think you can set the clock as well. Let's look at the man page one more time. If I remember right, set NTP, yeah, set time. You can set the time as well, and you can do the time zone. Now, one thing with the time zone, you can do time date CTL -- list time zones. Time zone maybe? I am fairly sure there was a way to list that with time date CTL. Well, I might check the man page one more time for that. There's a command called tzselect, which walks you through a bit of a wizard to be able to give you your time zones. So let's use this real quick. I'm in the Americas. I am in the United States, so we'll do 49. I am, let's see, we don't have Atlanta for this, but let's do easternmost areas, and therefore TZ will be used. Now this does not actually set the time zone, but rather it tells you the name of the time zone that you need for that. So is the above information okay? We'll say yes, and it says so you can use in the script America-New York. So if I were to do that time date CTL and then set the time zone, if I wanted it to be this particular time zone, we will need to use America, New York. Now there's another thing with configuring time service clients, and that is telling it where to get your NTP information. So I think the command for this is RHCE. See if I remember right. Yes, and then there was something else with RHCE. When in doubt, question mark. When in doubt, -- help. All right, so that's not helping us much. Let's get out of this. Quit. Okay. So man RHCE. What it should tell us, if I remember right. Yeah, so we have tracking, stratum, ref time, sources. That's what I was looking for. RHCE sources, not Chorny, Cronny, ONYC sources. I might have to be root for that. All right, so there are our gopher.fart.website. Wow. So those are our current sources for NTP. And you can do a -v. I think the -v tells you what each of these are used for. I can't remember off the top of my head if RHCE if you can set sources with this, but what I would probably do if I needed to change the NTP source is head to the etc directory, and we are going to go into, or not go into rather, we are going to edit cronny.conf. Now I would need to actually run this as sudo to actually be able to make changes. But here is where you would be configuring your pools. You can do multiple pools if you wish. You can either give it an IP address, or you can give it a fully qualified domain name. This iBurst, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what that does, but I know that it helps with the initial synchronization with your NTP server to be able to get that time going on. So let's say that we wanted to add, actually let me back out of this here, and sudo vi cronny.conf. We're actually going to change this to us.pool.ntp.org. I'm pretty sure that's a valid thing for that. What I'm going to do is restart cronny. All right, so let's check the status. All right, so it's there, and let's look at RHCE sources. Okay, so notice we have some different sources here, and that is because we have changed our, from the configuration file, we have changed to a different NTP source. So that about covers, I think, configuring time service clients for what we would need to know. The next thing is installing and updating packages from the Red Hat network or remote repository or from the local file system. So for this, I'm going to need to attach an ISO, I think, to be able to do this from the local file system. Do I want to do an example of that? I might save that for my own practice and just talk about what the topic is. So you've seen me use DNF, which you can also use Yum for that. Yum is going to be a symlink to DNF, which is the package manager that you will typically be using for in installing your packages. However, that is not the only way to make that happen. And so let's do, we'll stay on this server. Let's go into a particular directory here. And we're going to go into, let's see, etc yum.repos.d. So these are the repos that you have configured that DNF or Yum is going to use. Now this one Red Hat repo, if I were to, I'm going to do head for that Red Hat repo. Actually, let's do N20 Red Hat repo. There are several repos that are here, and this is kind of a key thing as far as you might have to configure a repository on your exam. There's no way to know, but you have to be able to make this work. And if you needed to configure that, you're probably going to have some of the default repositories available for you, so you know what to put in the configuration file. And the main things that you're going to need, that you have to have for this in the brackets is the actual name of your repository. Then you give it a friendly name if you want. The base URL is where DNF or Yum is going to reach out to try to get the information and the packages and such. And let's say that your repository is like the local ISO, which I guess I'll attach an ISO to this VM and we'll try that out. That instead of https:// you're going to have file : then the pathway to wherever your repositories are. Enabled equals, is it enabled or not? This one happens to not be, and you need to have GPG check. This doesn't necessarily have to be a 1. This can be a 0, but I'm pretty sure GPG check has to be there. And if you do have it as a 1, you need to tell it where to find the key file for doing the GPG check. So let us do this. I'm going to pause for just a moment and add the rel ISO to this VM, and then we'll see if we can configure that as a repo and install something from it. So I will be right back. All right, so I'm back. Let's clear the screen here, ls block, and we now have, actually let's do block ID, sudo block ID, and where is it at? It's there. We have our little ROM here. It should appear as block ID because we'll need this for mounting it. I'm sure it's probably staring me in the face. It'll tell us, this is it. All right, so SR0 is our device here. So the thing with mounting is you have to use something called a loop, and that will allow us to get this little ISO file to actually mount to a file system. So let's make a directory. We're going to call it mnt repo. Of course, actually I'm going to sudo into root. That'll save me a little bit of time here. Make dir mnt repo. And what we're going to do, I'm actually going to copy this type here. And we know that this is going to be dev sr0. So vi etc fs tab. So dev sr0, I think is what we said that was. And mnt repo, the file system type is this. And we're going to do, what did I say, defaults and loop. I think that's what I want for that, 0, 0. And let's see what happens here. Mount-a, df-h. And let's go into mount repo. All right, we see files here. Let's see if we can less the EULA. All right, and we can read. And that's really all we need, is be able to read some files. So let's see, where is this going to be that we want? Is it going to be under ISO Linux? Let's see, ISO Linux. Nope. Is it under base OS? Might be that. CD base OS. Yeah, this is what I want. All right, so we're going to try to set up our little repo here. So what I'm going to do, we're going to disable the current enabled repos. Now, this is actual Red Hat Enterprise Linux system, so we can use Subscription Manager to do this. So let's do, we'll just do DNF repo list real quick. All right, so we want to do Subscription Manager, repos. I think disable is what we want. And then the name, the repo ID. We might not have to use dash dash. I can't remember off the top of my head if we need dash dash for this. Manager repos, spell subscription correctly. All right, it took a little bit longer than I expected, but that's fine. And we'll change this to base OS RPMs. All right, so let us try to make our repository. So we have our mount repo, and base OS is where that's going to be. So let's go and see. Let's vi etc yum.repos.d, and we're going to call this base.repo. All right, so we're going to give it a name. We're just going to call it base repo. Name is equal to, we're going to call that the base repository. Base URL is going to be RL. It's going to be equal to mount repo base OS. Let's see, we need to do enabled equals, is it enabled? Yeah, 1 GPG check. We're not going to check GPG. I think that's everything that we need. All right, so let's see what happens. DNF repo list. All right, so it found it. And let's DNF search HTTPD. See if we can find that. All right, doesn't have absolutely everything, but it can find something. Let's do DNF search nano. Maybe that's a part of it. There we go. So we can install nano. So DNF install nano. And it's coming from the base repo repository, and we just installed that from the ISO file that we had. We made our little repository for it. So you don't have to have a ton of different things in that, but just enough to be able to get to your file. Now, another way of doing this, let's do DNF remove nano. So we're going to uninstall it. And what we're going to do is download the RPM file. So let's go into the temp directory, and yeah, download only, that's it. So we want to do DNF download only, oh wait, no, DNF install download only. Let's take a look at that man page again. Download, what's that under? I think it's under install, of course. -- download only, and then the package name. So let's see. No, there was one other thing. I'm going too fast. That's one thing. Speed kills on your exam. Yeah, you have to manage your time. Okay, without performing any RPM transaction. So let's see what happens here. DNF, download only, and nano. See if this does what we want. Yeah, that's what I thought. We have to tell it to install or do something, but just download only. I think there's another command, maybe yum download or something like that. But what that gives us, or what it should give us, where's my file? All right. Oh, I think I have to tell it a directory as well. Let's see if that works. There it is. Okay. Yeah, there was another command that we can use for that, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but this will work for us. So we have the RPM file. You can install RPMs as well. You can use DNF to install the RPM, or you can do RPM. I think what we want is IVH. Yeah. an IVH verbose, and the H gives you a little bit of a status bar. Nano, we feed it the RPM, and that'll give us the package as well. And then nano, and there's our nano writer. So that's doing the install of a package from using RPM as well as DNF for updating. Can't remember the RPM command off the top of my head. I would have to refer to man pages for that. But I know DNF upgrade will be how you are altering your package. Now, module streams. So let's do this. We are, I don't think, to get back to where we can use module streams. All right, we're going to work a little bit backwards here. Or, I'm going to take the easy way out just because I'm here in my home lab. This you're not going to be able to see, but I'm going to go to my hypervisor and I'm going to revert to a snapshot for my VM here. So I'm going to pause, do the snapshot revert, and then be right back. All right, so I've reverted my snapshot. I'm actually going to need to kill this terminal and start another one because it freezes because of me breaking the connection here. So let's SSH eddy admin back to lab rel svr01. And we're going to sudo into root. All right, so here we are. So package module streams. This is kind of similar to the old like group install of stuff where you can do like virtualization host and such. But if I were to do yum, let's see. You can probably do this with DNF as well, but yum module list. It's going to show us all of the other available modules and what we have configured for them. All right, so the example I'm going to use here is PostgreSQL. By default, if you were to install PostgreSQL, you are going to be installing version 10. And what we can do is enable different module streams. And even with this, notice how you have, let's expand this here. Expand the window. Will that help? No. Let's run this as well. It gives you what the letters mean there at the bottom. That's useful. All right. What is it? Let's see. HTTPD should be on this list somewhere. Okay. So in addition to common, you have also the, like for HTTPD, you have devel or development and minimal install. So it kind of gives you a little bit of control over what packages that you're going to get, such as if we were to enable the PostgreSQL 12 and we're doing the install, we're only going to be getting stuff for PostgreSQL 12. So let's see if I can remember how to do this module enabling and such. So yum module, believe we would do enable PostgreSQL :12, I think is what we have to do for that. So let's see. All right, that's looking good. So let's go back to our yum module list. Let's just grep for Postgres. That way we don't have all of that stuff. Yep, and we see that 12 is now enabled. So if I were to try to install PostgreSQL, if I can spell it correctly, we see that it's going to try to get version 12. Now, I'm going to stop this here. We can change back to the other module, and I think, let's look at the man pages for yum, search for module. /module is an easy way to do that search, and then n will take you to the next one. There is, let's see if I can find it here, because I know there were some, there it is, module command. So you can switch to modules. The remove, I believe, tells you, it basically is like resetting the modules that you have. I'm going to try this switch to command. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. So yum module switch to PostgreSQL 10. Let's see what that does. Otherwise, you would have to disable Postgres 10 to get, missing groups or modules, So let's do this. Let's see if we can just enable Postgres 10. I'm not sure if it'll let us do that. I think we have to disable 12 and then enable 10. I may be wrong with that. I misspelled it. Of course, I'm trying to go too fast. PostgreSQL gres ql 10. So let's go back to switch 2 and see if that does what I think it will do. All right, it's going to ask us if we want to do this, and I believe it is, yeah, there we go. So if I were to do yum install post gres ql, it should give us version 10. So let's just install this, and then we're going to change the module back to 12. Let's do switch to 12. I'm curious to see what happens, because I remember there was something like I might have to uninstall stuff and reinstall. Modules are not something I work with. Let's see, upgrade. All right, so it'll upgrade it, and it will change the stream. All right, so yes, let's do that. And now let's switch back to 10 and see if it's going to downgrade it. Yep, so it's going to downgrade it. All right, that's kind of nifty. I have I don't work with modules that often. Again, you know, in my lab environment, I don't touch it, and my day-to-day work is in the Windows world for right now. That will hopefully change at some point relatively soon. But here's your example of the module streams. The last topic in this, and I know I'm starting to run a bit long with this video, but I want to try to plow through here, is modifying the system bootloader. Now there is a command to do this that kind of makes life a little bit easier for you, and it's called grubby. So we're going to go ahead and install grubby. And I've touched grubby a couple of times, but it's not something that I have swirling in my memory all the time. All right, so it's already installed. So I believe you can list, or actually you can do, well, one thing we can do is yum, is it list kernel? I believe that's the command, or kernel list. Maybe it's list dash kernel. Nope. Let's look up yum. I know that kernel is in there. Let's try this again. Man yum slash kernel. All right, that's not the one I'm looking for. There's a particular command that's removing kernels. Yeah, that's not showing me what I want. What was that? Basically, it lists all the kernels that you have on your system. So let's see what grubby can do for us. Man grubby. You can tell I haven't touched these in a while, so this will be something that I'm going to need to review before my RHCE exam, just in case I have to deal with grubby, and I'll be a little bit more knowledgeable about what's going on. So yeah, default kernel, I remember that. Yeah, so grubby default kernel. All right, so that's our current kernel that we have. We can change that to a different kernel, but I know there's a way to list it. So let's do man yum. Maybe it's in DNF. No, I think it's just showing the same as what we had. What is that command? It's like yum. I swear it was yum kernel list. Maybe it's list kernel. Maybe that was the one that I tried and it failed. Let's see. Yum kernel list. No, it wasn't that. I guess we could do this. Yum list kernel. Okay, well, that's one way of doing it. That's not what I'm thinking of, though. Because what we would want, if we want to change our default kernel, then we're going to need to have that that line. So grubby default kernel. You know, we're going to have that full line there. So I think actually, so that's our default kernel 305.7.4. We should be able to change this to whatever kernel that we want using grubby. Add kernel, no. Set default. That's it. So grubby, let's do this. Uname -a. So we see all of our kernel information there. And let's do this. Grubby set default boot VM Linux -4.18.0-305.el8. Of course. All right, so let us look at man grubby. Yeah, clearly I'm going to have to review this before I have. So set default equals kernel path. All right, let's try that. I misspelled the VM Linux. That's what the problem is. Nope. VMLINUZ. All right, when in doubt, let's go into this directory here. Let's ls boot. Copy this here. Or I might not have more than one kernel. That may be what the problem is. Unless I need to do it. Let's see, ls boot EFI. Red Hat. All right, nothing in there. Boot grub 2. Yeah, nothing that I want to see in there. So we copied that. So let's try our grubby command once more. And if this doesn't work, then I'm just going to call this a failure and add that to my list of things I need to review for the exam. I must have, probably you watching at home, or at home, it's like a TV show, probably saw the error like immediately when I was doing wrong. So, well, when in doubt, get the actual files. So now if I were to do grubby get default dash dash, no, is it dash dash get? No, it's not. When in doubt, check man. But the problem with this is it's default kernel. That's it. Is if you're having to check the man pages for everything, then it's going to eat a lot of time on your exam. Yeah, so we have that as the boot. Let's reboot this VM. Let's see if that persists. The problem is if you're having to look up the man pages like I am for this, for everything, you're probably going to run out of time on your exam. So as I said earlier in the video, it's good to do these kind of things, especially if it's topics like these that I haven't touched for a while because I've been so focused on Ansible for RHCE. It'll give you an idea of, how well do you actually know what's going on here. So I'm going to look at the VM. You're not able to see this. And it should be back up. And while we're here, where did I do uname? See if we can find that. No, connection closed. Where is the output for it? There it is. Okay. So I'm actually going to copy that. We'll just throw it in the gedit file. Okay, so let's SSH back into our lab server. I think uname-r would tell us just the kernel. Yeah. All right. And so we see this is different than the other kernel that we have. You can see that from the document there. So if you change it with grubby, it will persist. You can, I think, edit the grub CFG file, and then there is it mkgrub maybe? There are some other commands that are grubs specific commands that can do this. I simply don't recall those off the top of my head, and so when I've had to do stuff with this, I typically have used grubby, but as you can see, it's not something that I've worked with often, so I'm clearly going to have to spend a little bit more time with this. So I want to thank you for taking the time to watch. I know that these kind of look like they're tutorials, but really they're practice sessions for me. But I do hope that some of the things I do in the practice session and some of the troubleshooting stuff I do will be useful for you for your own RHCE preparations and such. I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video and invite everyone, if you haven't subscribed yet, to do that. Feel free to leave comments and ask questions and such. I'll answer to the best of my ability and as I have time. If you enjoyed the content of the video, make sure you do click like and share it with others that might find it useful as well. Thanks again for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.